What if I told you the first person to live forever might already be alive today? Digital immortality isn't just a sci-fi fantasy anymore. It's a growing field of research, and some experts even predict mind uploading could become possible within this century. Imagine a future where your mind, memories, and personality continue inside a computer, free from the limits of your biological body. This idea has moved from the realm of shows like Black Mirror and Altered Carbon into real scientific labs. Researchers have already mapped the entire brain of a mouse, and projects are underway to capture the wiring of the human brain in stunning detail. But here's the big question. When your mind is uploaded into a computer, are you still you, or just a copy? To answer that, we first need to understand what it would take to map every connection inside your brain. Mapping the mind isn't just about ambition. It's about confronting scale. Picture the blueprint of a human brain. Around 86 billion neurons, each forming connections with thousands of others, adding up to roughly 100 trillion synapses. Every one of these links is part of the network that makes you who you are. Memories, personality, the sense of self, all are built from these vast circuits. But capturing this level of detail is a task so complex that even the largest scientific teams have struggled to make a dent. The brain's complexity comes not only from the sheer number of parts, but from how those parts interact. It's often called the most complex object in the known universe for a reason. Neurons are constantly firing, forming new connections, and breaking old ones, creating a dynamic web that changes over time. Standard imaging techniques like fMRI and magnetoencephalography, MEG, help researchers observe brain activity, but their resolution is limited. Current scans are like faint echoes of a symphony. They hint at brain activity, but lack microscopic detail. They can't reveal the precise routes signals take or how individual cells interact at the synapse level. To get closer to a true map, scientists turn to a method called serial sectioning. This involves slicing brain tissue into layers thinner than a human hair and scanning each slice with high-powered electron microscopes. The process is painstaking. In 2019, researchers used this approach to map a cubic millimeter of mouse brain. That tiny sample contained about 100,000 neurons and 1 billion synapses. To achieve this, they divided the section into 25,000 slices and ran them through 5 electron microscopes, generating over 100 million images over several months. Scaling this up to an entire human brain would require processing billions of such slices, an undertaking that would take enormous time, resources, and computing power. Even if we could capture every structural detail, the next challenge is understanding what the map means. No one yet knows how consciousness emerges from these connections. Mapping structure doesn't automatically reveal the spark of awareness. We can see how information might flow, but it's another thing entirely to explain how those patterns translate into thoughts, memories, or the feeling of being you. The question of whether mapping alone could ever unlock the secret of consciousness keeps researchers guessing. The effort to map the brain has already tested the limits of science and technology. Europe's Human Brain Project invested 600 million euros in the hope of simulating the brain's architecture, but it fell short of fully mapping even basic structures. Similarly, in 2009, Henry Markram of the Blue Brain Project predicted a functional synthetic human brain within 10 years, a goal that remains unmet. These projects show just how much further we have to go before a complete functional map of the human mind is possible. If we ever do reach the point where every connection is mapped and digitized, the implications are profound. Would a digital version of your brain be just a file or something more? Could it hold your memories, your feelings, your sense of self? And if you could copy that file, which version would be the real you? These questions go beyond science. They touch on ethics, identity, and what it means to be a person. Still, the technical hurdle of mapping the mind is just one side of the problem. Turning that map into a working digital mind brings a whole new set of challenges. The next step is figuring out whether today's computers, or even those of the future, could ever handle the complexity of a human brain. Instead of asking whether computers can catch up to the brain, let's look at what it would actually take to build a digital mind and why the power problem is so daunting. The brain's 86 billion neurons and 100 trillion synapses form a network that's not just vast, but incredibly efficient. Simulating this system isn't a matter of scaling up what we already have. Even state-of-the-art GPUs handle AI tasks, but neurons fire at up to 200 times per second across trillions of synapses, far beyond what current hardware can emulate in real time. The brain's parallel processing and adaptability put even our fastest supercomputers to shame. To get a sense of the challenge, consider the storage demands. When researchers mapped just a tiny slice of mouse brain, the dataset ran into terabytes. If you scale that up, mapping and storing the connections for a whole human brain would require petabytes, thousands of terabytes, just to preserve the raw structure. And that's before you even try to run a simulation. A functioning digital mind would need to process this massive data set continuously, updating and responding to sensory inputs in real time. It's not just about storing information, it's about running a living, dynamic model that never pauses. Processing power is the next hurdle. Sandberg and Bostrom's estimates put the minimum requirement for a detailed neuron-level simulation at somewhere between 10 to 21s and 10 to 26 operations per second. Today's most powerful supercomputers operate many orders of magnitude below that threshold. The difference isn't just a gap, it's a chasm. Even if we keep doubling our computing power every 2 years, as Moore's law predicts, it could take centuries before we reach the level needed for a faithful emulation of the human brain. And that's assuming we don't hit physical or economic limits along the way. There's also the issue of energy efficiency. The human brain runs on about 20 watts, less than a light bulb, while even the most advanced computers consume far more power for much simpler tasks. Neuromorphic chips, inspired by the brain's architecture, promise to narrow this gap. These chips process information in a way that mimics neural networks, allowing for more efficient, parallel computation with much lower energy use. But while neuromorphic hardware is a major step forward, it still falls short of the scale and flexibility needed to recreate a full human mind. The technical obstacles are only part of the story. Even if we someday have the hardware and software to run a digital brain, a deeper question remains. Would this simulation truly be conscious? The Chinese room thought experiment, introduced by philosopher John Searle, points out that a system might simulate human responses convincingly without any real understanding or awareness. In other words, a digital mind could behave like you, respond like you, and even remember your life, yet lack any genuine inner experience. This casts doubt on whether an uploaded mind would be the real you or just a sophisticated imitation. That uncertainty leads directly to questions of identity and personhood. If a digital mind is just a copy, does it have rights? If it can be duplicated, what does that mean for individuality? And if the original you still exists, which one is the real person? These issues aren't just technical. They strike at the heart of what it means to be human. As we push closer to the possibility of digital immortality, the real challenge may not be in the hardware or the code, it's in rethinking the boundaries of self, consciousness, and identity. What we choose to believe about these questions could shape how we define humanity in the age of digital minds. As we weigh the possibilities of digital immortality, it's clear that our progress is both impressive and incomplete. The mouse brain mapping experiment and the ambitions of the Human Brain Project show how much we've uncovered about the brain structure, but also highlight the enormous gaps that remain before mind uploading becomes possible. If mind uploading one day creates digital versions of ourselves, we'll face questions not just about technology, but about rights, identity, and the meaning of consciousness. Would you trust a digital you to carry on your story? If these questions challenge how you see yourself, let us know your thoughts below. Digital immortality may rewrite what it means to be human, but first, we must answer, does a perfect copy still carry a soul?